Well, hello everyone. David Garnes here for the Little Theatre of Manchester. Today I have two special guests. Let me just begin by saying a few things about, by way of information, a little bit about the theater. So as 2020 comes to an end, we're winding up what we've called our LTM at Home presentations for this, and which we have been doing since March in this very, what shall we say, unusual year. Thank you all, those who are watching, for your responses to the various events we've managed to bring to you. We can tell by the number of people watching and by the nice comments you've made. We feel it's important at this time, particularly to keep in touch with our theater community as we make our way through this really unprecedented time. So we will continue with other presentations as the new year begins, and these will be online. And eventually, of course, we'll be back to our regular scheduling as we all return to normalcy, whenever and whatever that might be. I have a feeling things will not be the same in many ways for us from this point on, but we'll see. So in the meantime, today we'll be talking about our current venture, an online reading of Jacques Lamarre's brand new holiday comedy, We Three Queens, which is scheduled for Tuesday, December 22nd at 7 p.m. and Wednesday, December 23rd at 2 p.m. Look at our LTM webpage or at our Facebook site for further information on how to register. So with me again today is Billy Winter, who is directing We Three Queens. Billy has been involved in much at LTM over the past couple of years, and it's been a pleasure for me to have him on several of these presentations. So welcome, Billy.
Thank you, David.
And our special guest today is Jacques Lamarre, creator, playwright, who wrote We Three Queens. Most of you are probably familiar with Jacques' plays, most of you watching, which have been presented locally and nationally over the past several years, quite a few years, I believe. I myself have seen a bunch of them, ranging from probably my favorite, the ever popular I Loved, I Lost, I Made Spaghetti. I've seen that a couple of times. All the way to plays at Theatre Works and here at the Little Theatre of Manchester as well. And I want to mention this because I really enjoyed it. And for me, it was kind of a departure for Jacques. I hadn't seen a play like this from him before. But there was last year, or in the past year, there was a recent workshop production of a play about Billie Holiday and the fascinating origins of the song Strange Fruit. I'd love to see that again. I hope we get to see that again sometime in the future, Jacques.
Same here.
Yeah.
Although it's become a little bit tricky in terms of, I guess it was always tricky, but in terms of telling the story of a Black person when you're a white person, and whether or not, not necessarily you're allowed to tell that story, but whether or not you're the right person to tell that story. So I'm looking for the right person to collaborate with to move that show forward.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of it. I really enjoyed it. And just for the benefit of those who are watching, one of our LTM regulars, Andrew Rosenstein, was in it. And so I kind of went because I knew Jacques had written it, but I also wanted to see Andrew as well. And it was in Hartford. So anyway, welcome, Jacques. It's been a while since we've talked, but one thing I'm remembering, and this was several years ago, when you were the guest at one of our lunchtime lectures, when we produced Mark Twain play, Is He Dead? Remember that?
Yeah.
And you were associated with the Mark Twain Museum in Hartford at that time.
Yeah.
That was a good production. It was interesting. And your thoughts about Mark Twain were, really appreciated by everyone who attended. So what I'd like to do today is to have you both give us an idea of what we have in store for us when We Three Queens, a comedy, debuts in the next couple of weeks. So, Jacques, do you want to start, and then Billy can talk about how he came to be involved?
Sure. So some of you may know that I'm one of the playwrights that has been involved with Christmas on the Rocks, which is now having its 8th year at Theater Works in downtown Hartford. And I wrote 2 of the segments in that show, and it's so much fun. And I love being involved with something that's become a Christmas tradition. And I have my own family Christmas traditions, and I think one of the things, growing up, that I particularly loved was the nativity scene. And of course, when you're a little kid, you see them as action figures. You don't necessarily see them as like religious iconography. So I was particularly interested by the Three Kings, and didn't really do a lot to get to know who they were. But I was thinking about, I'd like to write a Christmas play. Something that could be done either by a theater annually or by theaters across the country, hopefully. And, Christmas on the Rocks, Theater Works has kept close to its chest. It hasn't really kind of gone out into the world much. And so I decided I really want to write something, but, what hasn't been written to death at this point. Although I have been wanting to do my own version of A Christmas Carol, and I have a concept for it. And Shane Kegler, who has been helping with programming this virtual theater reading series for Little Theatre of Manchester, reached out and said, we want to do a reading of something of yours. And I put forward some options of things that I've worked on. And, he's like, I said, when are you thinking about doing this? And he said, December. And I had these 2 ideas, one a version of A Christmas Carol and the other We Three Queens. And I think for a little theater audience, he was more interested in a version of A Christmas Carol. And so I'm like, okay, I was a little bit disappointed because I think I was a bit more excited about my take on the Three Kings. But he seemed to latch more on to the Christmas Carol. So I said, all right. And I didn't hear anything for a little bit. And then he came back and said, we have a director attached, and it's this young guy, Billy. And I hadn't met Billy before, hadn't talked to him before, but I visited his Facebook page, and I'm like, no, this is the guy who's going to direct We Three Queens. So after a conversation with Debbie Freund, went over Shane's head, went to the queen of LTM and said, I really want to do this. I know you guys have done stuff with queer content, and that, it's been well met. I'm not looking to do something raunchy per se. I just want to do something fun for the holidays and something different. And she said, sure. And so Shane said, sure. And Billy seemed very excited when confronted with the idea. So that meant I had to write it. I had to make something that didn't exist very quickly.
So it was really it is all freshly written then.
Yes, it's very freshly baked. I took a week off and rented an Airbnb down in Brantford across the Long Island Sound from the Thimble Islands, and I went down with the intention of working on A Christmas Carol and a work that I want to do on Edith Piaf, and the decision happened that week that I was going to work on this instead. And so I had to start boning up on who the Magi were and how I wanted to spin it. And so I started the process that week, and basically finished the play last week, and the cast has started rehearsals for the reading, and I already gave them a new script since that started. So, it's a work in progress. It's a finished play, but it's going to be very helpful, thanks to Little Theatre of Manchester and Billy, to hear the words come to life so quickly and figure out where these kings need to head, or these queens in this case.
Okay, so I knew that you had said it was new, but I didn't realize that I thought maybe you would have had a first draft, kind of waiting in the wings for something
sometimes they just need something to aim for to get moving, or a deadline. And I sat down last year to write this play, and I maybe have a page. And I'm sure I still have it on my computer, but I didn't even go back to it. I just wanted to start from scratch. And, my initial thought was they were just going to be very flamboyant gay men. But I instead decided to make it a story about 3 drag queens. And it's kind of inspired a bit by Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. And, so those are 2 road trip movies about 3 drag queens going from one place to another, and the adventures that they have on the way to achieve their goal. And I thought, it's the Magi, And so, not that the Magi were necessarily drag queens. We don't know enough about them, but it's probably fair to say they weren't.
Probably not, although the depictions always show them in quite elaborate attire.
Well, there's a lot of scholarship on them, and there's a question as to whether or not they are historically real. If you're a person who's a biblical literalist, they're real. There are some where it seems like they were written into the because there's only one gospel in which they're mentioned, and there is no mention of how many there are, and there is no mention of an exact timeline of when they arrived. So it's theorized that they could have shown up 2 years after the birth of Christ. Whenever we see a nativity set, they're in the manger, or they're in the stable, and he's in the manger, and there they are with the shepherds and whatnot. But if you do some scholarship on it, the story is a bit loosey-goosey. One of the famous things surrounding them in the 2 paragraphs that they appear in the Bible is that they go to Herod first. Herod's like, go find them, report back to me so I can go worship them and worship the new king. And they have a dream and that says, don't go back there, And so instead he turns around and kills everyone's male children under the age of 2. And there's no historic background for that as well. So, in terms of being a playwright, it gives a lot of room to have fun, and I don't think anyone who is super religious, super Christian are going to come away from this highly offended. I think that there's a lot about it that's very playful. If you think that you might be offended, you probably will be, and maybe you want to stay away. But I think there's a lot to enjoy in it.
Yeah, no, it hadn't really occurred to me, that there might be those who might not take to it, and if that's the case, then perhaps they would decide not to watch.
Yeah.
By the way, just one question: when you mentioned they're being mentioned in the Bible, is the gold, frankincense, and myrrh mentioned in the Bible, or is that all improvised too?
No, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh is mentioned in the Bible, and the drag queens' names are Goldie, Frankie, Sense, and Myrrh. So, in a certain sense, they are the gift. And I mean, they give of themselves as a gift in a way that's particular to them. But yeah, gold, frankincense, and myrrh is mentioned. But if people go pick up the book of Matthew, the story's pretty much up front. I think it's like chapter 2. But Matthew, let's see, Mark and John don't write about the birth of Christ at all. And Luke does, probably in greater detail than Matthew, but Matthew is the only one that mentions the star, and I believe is the only one that mentions the star, and he's certainly the only one that mentions the wise men.
Yeah, and of course we don't
fill in the blanks.
Well, plenty of blanks, because my understanding is we don't even know when lots of the Bible was written. I mean, could have been many, many, many years, after. Like, who wrote the...
presumably this all happened within, I think, within the first century after Christ's birth, because, these stories got handed. But, I mean, there's a lot of scholarship, biblical scholarship, that I did not go into in terms of, who really wrote what and whatnot. I wasn't interested in doing that. I did spend a lot of time, and it's making the actors crazy, looking at historical context. And so there's lots of references that are historically accurate in this somewhat silly play.
Okay. So, Billy.
Yes.
You read the play. You got involved. You read the play. Had you seen the play before you said you were interested? Or
no, I knew nothing. Jacques reached out to me on Facebook and said, here's the 2 different ideas I'm thinking of, and naturally I gravitated towards We Three Queens. I was very excited about this concept. I'm a big fan of like taking a well-known story and sort of flipping it on its head and playing with what we think we know. And I'm gay and I love Christmas. So of course I was excited about it. But no, I knew next to nothing other than, Jacques' initial concept.
And I knew just about as much at the same time.
Right. I said, this seems great. Let's do it.
So how did you, so then you entered the picture, you talked to Jacques, and there really wasn't too much time involved here.
It's been a very quick turnaround. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you go about casting? I'm assuming there were no auditions. Is that correct?
No, I said, Jacques, please help. And we went from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate to know a number of drag queens on a national level and on a local level. I reached out to Sky Casper, who does a series of drag brunches in the area and books a lot of events with drag performers. And he recommended that I start with Mia Easylay, who is, a person who makes their living doing drag. They perform weekly at the Shea and at Mohegan Sun, and the pandemic has been obviously hard for everybody. But when you think about drag performers who, their habitat is bars and clubs, and that's the places we were, almost immediately told to stay out of. And a lot of the drag performers were among the first to go online and entertain us during this time. And they were doing it for tips and whatnot. And it was like you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a drag queen for a while. But, I think it's gotten hard, and they've been forced to become very ingenious in terms of what they're doing to make their ends meet. And so I reached out to Mia, and she was interested. And then I really wanted to have normally when you see the three wise men depicted, one of them is usually black, and that is because one of them is traditionally seen as being from Ethiopia, and I didn't know if I'd like to write it into the script that this would be someone from Ethiopia, but I wasn't certain how that would play, in terms of, making it seem like all black people are from Ethiopia or what have you. So I decided to make the character from Egypt, but fortunately, Mia is roommates with Kenya Moan Hart, who is an amazing drag performer as well. So she floated it. Mia floated it to Kenya, and I followed up. And then Billy did recommend the third person who also performs with Mia and Kenya, and that's Amethyst. Mm-hmm. And so we have three professional drag entertainers who are playing Goldie, Frankie, Sense, and Myrrh. And we are, special guest.
Yeah, mine may join us too. I don't know.
I got two kittens over pandemic break, and they've got the rule of the roost. And then there's two other actors in the piece. One plays Matthew, but also plays some other male roles. And Shane recommended an actor that I've never worked with before, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen on stage before, named Joey Diaz. And for LTM people, not related to Angela Diaz, but he.
Yeah, I found out about that too. I wondered about that.
Yeah, no relation, and he's terrific. He's really, really great. And one of my favorite actors to work with, who actually directed my very first play, is Rhea Martin. And I don't know if Rhea has done much work at Little Theatre of Manchester.
She has. She directed, I can't remember, she directed something within the last couple of years, I believe.
Yeah, she is a very versatile actor and so funny, and she's a Manchester resident like myself. So I really, wanted to at least have one person that I'd worked with before on this project to be my spy on the inside. And so, we've had 2 rehearsals thus far, and usually in the process, I like to jump out at this point and let the director and the actors work through things, mainly because I start getting bossy, and so give Billy a chance to make the show his own. So I think the next rehearsal is tonight.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm planning on drinking and rehearse.
So Billy,
yes.
What did you discover as you thought more about how you would direct this? Did it appeal to what you thought it might appeal to, the fact that you might be able to take something and just go kind of, you certainly have free reign in terms of, as Jacques was saying, that, well, of course, the facts are the facts in the play, but nevertheless, I think probably the direction might lend itself to.
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. The script is, I can't say enough good things about it. It's very much right up my alley in terms of the humor and everything like that. But it's like Jacques said, it's still very early on in the rehearsal process, so I haven't had a lot of smart thoughts yet. But I
wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. This is one of the things that's fascinating as a playwright is, taking the stuff that you hear in your head. And, to me, I wasn't overly worried about writing for drag queens, to be honest, because I do that. I've been writing for Varla Jean Merman, the drag performer, for 16 years now. And I just wrote additional material for Breenie Maxwell. I've written some stuff for Barbara Jones Street Sand. And so getting into the rhythm of how a drag queen would speak was not going to be an issue for me so much as, making sure I got the historical context, right enough to have fun with it. But once you put it in the mouths of the actors and whatnot, that's really the turning point. And I think, we had, at the end of the first rehearsal, one of the actors said, I'm really not comfortable with this particular part. And we had a conversation, and Billy was very helpful with that. And we rewrote the play. And I thought, if it takes this actor out of the experience, what's it going to do to the audience? And so it was maybe not the story that needed to be told at that time. So, Billy's input and actors' input's going to be so valuable in helping shape not only what you all see when you tune in to watch We Three Queens, but in what happens next with this play.
Yeah. So have you been involved in rehearsals, Jacques?
I was, I sat in on the first rehearsal. I, kind of talked with the actors a bit, and then I gave them some thoughts at the beginning. And then Billy and I have had some conversations offline about, what I think he needs to focus on and what have you. And then I wasn't going to join the second rehearsal, but I had done the rewrite on the script, and I wanted to make sure it was okay, particularly this area that was concerning for an actor. And then it turned out that one of the actors wasn't able to make the rehearsal. So suddenly I was playing a drag queen, quite well, I might add. And so tonight, the training wheels are off, and they're going to run, and hopefully I don't have to see it until tech rehearsal.
Yeah.
And there's going to be an unusual amount of tech for this, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For reading on Zoom.
Yeah. Let's go into that in a minute, because I am curious. We've talked before about the things that are so different when you're presenting a play this way. But before I forget, I do want to mention, I'm glad you spoke of Varla Jean Merman, because I'm a big follower of. She's been here many times in the Hartford area, and yeah. I think the last time I saw her was at Theater Works. And then,
yeah, she did the Theater Works when they were at Theater Works, and then she did it when they were at the Wadsworth.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And then I think, was she at the Wadsworth one other time, like way long? It was some theater that
I brought her to the Twain House, and Outfilm Connecticut brought her to Cine Studio. We hand her around town.
Yeah.
But I met her when she came. I had been a big fan and had seen her in New York City and in Provincetown, and then she came to do The Mystery of Irma Vep at Hartford Stage.
Yeah.
And that's how I met her and became friends with her and started being her writing partner. And
that was a wonderful production at Hartford Stage.
Oh, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Oh, fabulous. Well, the other person was Jeffrey. No, what's the other person's name? The other actor.
Mystery of Irma Vep?
Yeah.
James Lacine, but James recently announced that James is now Celeste.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and I don't know if Celeste is a she or not, or a they, but they've announced that they're going by a new.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, Varla Jean is one of the funniest entertainers, performers that you just laugh from start to finish, and so witty. But a lot of the wit is because of the collaboration, I guess, that you do on.
Yeah, I mean, we bounce off each other really well. I mean, sometimes I write stuff for her and it never sees the light of day, but it gives her something to respond to and make better. And this year, obviously, live theater has gone down the tubes, but for so many people, she is a highlight of their trip to Provincetown during the summer. And obviously their numbers in Provincetown took a hit, and she said, given the opportunity, I will go. And so they created a makeshift theater outside by a pool at the Crown and Anchor. She doesn't normally perform there. She normally performs indoors at the Art Theater and Art House Theater. And so she was one of maybe 4 acts that was performing up in Provincetown, and she sold out every performance. We created a show called Super Spreader, and she was on the cover of the New York Times art section about, what it meant for her to be up there and how it changed the experience. But everyone said they absolutely loved the show, and I think it's what people needed this summer.
Well, and a very professional entertainer.
Yeah.
Billy, let's get back to a little bit about anything different this time as you've been rehearsing remotely that you haven't encountered in the other plays that you've been involved with that we've done this way? I find it fascinating that this whole process of from start to our watching it, we, the audience, watching it with these faces and boxes. I mean, I know we all know that a lot goes into having that happen.
Yes. We've been doing our rehearsals only on Zoom so far. We haven't made the move over to StreamYard. We'll be doing that next week when we do our tech rehearsal. But there is definitely a big challenge with this show. Jacques, am I allowed to say that there's lip sync numbers in this?
Yes,
So there's a few different lip sync numbers, and so that's going to be a challenge to figure out how we're going to make those happen. I'm going to be, obviously working with the queens, hopefully discussing it tonight, how we plan on bringing these numbers to life, because we can't do them in person, obviously. But so like Jacques has said, they've been doing this since the beginning of quarantine and have been very innovative in how they do their work. So I'm hoping they have some ideas about how we can make what the script calls for happen.
Yeah, and with a lot of them will have done stuff, but by themselves. So I'm not exactly sure how having 3 drag queens, or at one point all 5 actors, or 2 points all 5 actors lip syncing, in terms of where does the music come from? How do they all respond to it? Are some of them going to be hearing it moments later? Because one of the things that I noticed with Zoom is, normally with acting, you want the dialogue to be like this, unless they're specifically supposed to stop and take a moment. And so there's a little delay that you get with this means of communication that, it'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do it. We just have to see how it plays.
Yeah. Well, I know my church, we're remote now. I go to the Unitarian Universalist Church here in Manchester, and we've had our choir doing music where they do it at home, and then they send the tape to someone who puts it all together. And it's really wonderful how it seems to work. If you need to talk to someone, either one of you, I can give you that person's name.
Oh, I don't need to get worried about that. That's Billy's job.
Yeah. I was going to say just Billy, and then I thought maybe Josh would. I mean, maybe you would like to do it, Jacques, as well. But anyway, the person's. I know him quite well, and I think he'd be happy to give you some tips. He has been the town troubadour so anyway,
we need the town drag queen.
Well, yes, that now it sounded like maybe one of them is local, or are they all local?
They're all Connecticut based. I don't believe any of them are in Manchester in terms of the drag performance, but they're all local talent that you can support, by going and seeing them at the Shea and Mohegan Sun, because they're, those venues have opened up. And have social distancing and masking requirements and whatnot. But I can't imagine they're doing as well as they would if they were able to have a traditional, schedule of performances.
Yeah. I didn't realize they were open. I hope they can stay open. I hope things aren't going to get, more restrictive.
Well, I'm fine with things being more restrictive if it's going to help bring this to an end. But at the same time, there are people like Mia and Kenya and Amethyst where, the amount of money you can make from tips for a virtual performance aren't necessarily as well as you do as walking out with cash in your hand, or your bra, or your G-string. But I do. What was that?
Or wherever.
Yeah. Although, I don't know about Amethyst, but I know that Kenya and Mia are doing things on Twitch, and people can tip through that. And I think they're doing quite well with it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But
Billy,
Billy work it out.
Billy, do you have are things passed between and among performers? You know how you've done that.
Yes, there will be
passing a glass of water.
Some props interactions. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yes, there will be.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I guess we've gone a little bit over. I don't really have anything else that's new. We could keep going back to things that we've talked about, and I'd love to hear more, but I think we probably should wind this up. Does either one of you want to say anything further? I'm just delighted that we're able to end our year with a play that's not only that it has to do with the holidays, but also that is giving people a chance to have some exposure, that they might not otherwise have, and just to keep busy. This is really getting to be. We don't want this to become a way of life, So it's good to have these things to do and to see. It's providing a lot of. I'm amazed at how much entertainment I've been able to view during this whole thing. I think it's incredible. I think people in show business and the arts have done an amazing job.
Absolutely.
And this is a local example of it. We as a theater I think we've done quite a bit, and we have a lot planned for the first part of this coming year as well. And then, of course, we can't plan. We don't know how far ahead to plan because we don't really know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Any comments before we say goodbye?
Billy?
I don't think so.
All right, excellent. I'll take the floor. Well, thank you to LTM for giving Billy and myself and the Queens and Rhea and Joey the opportunity to do this show. I'm so excited to be able to present something that's just fun. I mean, the show has something to say. It does have a point, but I'm thrilled with the opportunity to make people laugh. And I've got 2 other virtual holiday shows going right now, and they're all with that same intention of providing what I'm hoping is smart comfort food at a time that we need it. And after, with the pandemic and with the election, no matter what side you're on, I think that being able to come together and enjoy good humor is great. And I think the other thing that I would just ask people is, you mentioned how the artists and arts organizations have really stepped up during this time. And there is so much uncertainty in terms of the ability for theaters to come back. I know that we're all worried about our favorite stores and our favorite restaurants. And, they have been able to be open, to a certain extent. And theaters have not. And, I look at Hartford Stage, they were the first ones to shut down, and they laid off, dozens of employees. I look at Little Theatre of Manchester, which has only 1 employee, but and you manage to push out a lot of comforting content to people. But it's going to be hard to start up again. Where does the money come from when you've not been doing ticket sales, or you had to maybe refund money? So if people can be generous at this time of year to theaters, whether or not it's Little Theatre of Manchester, which I hope, of course, you'll support LTM. But if there's some place that you particularly enjoy that you want to make sure their doors open again in, say, the fall of 2021, please make a donation.
Yes, I thank you I'm very glad that we've ended our talk with this plug for, let's hear it for the artists, for the theater and the people in the arts. Absolutely.
Give them all gold, frankincense, and myrrh, whatever you can part with.
There you go. There you go. So I want to thank you, Jacques, for being part of this today. And of course, Billy, again, I've really enjoyed our talks about the plays and the things you've done at LTM. Not just as director. You've been, Billy, I should mention, Jacques, did you see The Normal Heart? Billy had a prominent role in that play when we did it a couple of years ago.
I did not see your production of it, I believe. Well, I'm trying to remember now. It was a while ago, right?
Last summer.
Yes, yeah. A year plus.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
What's his name played Ned Weeks?
Sean
Jr. Yes, I did see it. I did see it. Very memorable performance, Billy. I loved it.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, I think we will say goodbye. Thanks again to the two of you. And I just want to remind everyone who's watching that, excuse me for 1 second.
He's a busy executive, that David.
I meant to turn that off before. I just want to remind everyone that I'm not, what we're watching, what we're doing right now will be shown at some point. But the two performances of the play will be available for viewing on the 22nd and the 23rd. So with that, I think I'll say goodbye. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.